Hey guys, I'm Mono and welcome to another weapons ranking video. This time we'll be taking a look at update 10. We have new weapons in the Russians. We have the DP, the PPSH, the SVT, the Mosin Nagant. So there's a lot of stuff that's new to the game that needs to go in this list. If you watched any of my previous episodes, there won't be much changing here, but I will be including the MGs in this list, which is something that I haven't done before. I will not include the scoped versions of the rifles for the sniper class, because honestly I don't really play sniper, and if you are playing sniper you don't really get to choose your weapon unless you're in the Russian side, in which case you want to get the SVT semi-auto scoped because it is basically the best weapon in the game. So yeah, before I get started, make sure you're following me on Twitch if you are already a subscriber to this channel. If you enjoy these videos, then maybe you want to catch me live. I usually live stream on Twitch. I will live stream on YouTube sometimes, occasionally, but most of the time I am live streaming on Twitch. So follow the link right at the top right or in the video description if you want to catch me there. And I do want to give a big shout out to everyone that supports the channel. Thank you very much, guys. You know who you are. If not, you are in this list right here. So yeah, thank you for supporting the channel and allowing me to keep doing this. All right, now let's get started. And let's start by talking about the bottom tier, which is going to be tier D, and that's where every single pistol in the game is going to be. So yeah, really simple. I don't think I need to explain myself. The pistols suck. Obviously, you don't want to use them unless you absolutely have to. So yeah, bottom tier, tier D pistols. All right, moving on to tier C, we have every single bolt action in the game. So the Mosin Nagants and the car. The Mosin Nagant, there's three variants of the Mosin Nagant, basically visual variations, and the sights are different, but they are basically exactly the same. Also, the car is basically the same as the Mosin Nagant. They all perform very similarly. They all have 5 shots. The car is maybe the best one because it does have the best sights, I think, out of all the bolt action rifles in the game. But yeah, all bolt actions tier C. The reason for this is because it is just simply, if you miss that first shot, whoever's on the other side is going to kill you with any other weapon. You are always at a disadvantage against basically everything else in the game, be it an SMG or a semi-auto rifle. At range, the semi-auto can do everything that you can, but just better because it can fire faster. And at short range, you can't really compete against anything, because if you run into 2 enemies, you might be able to kill one of them, and then you're dead. So overall, in any loadout ever, if you have the option to not use the bolt action rifle, then don't use it, basically. Only exceptions would be if you're gonna be playing really slowly at range, then the single shot action might not bother you, and you might be effective anyway. And I always get this comment, you know, people saying, oh, I'm really effective with the car, I really like it, it's an awesome weapon, and yes, it's a very satisfying weapon to use, but you would be better off with the G43, with the Garand, with the SVT, with pretty much everything else. So, tier C, all the bolt actions. And joining the bolt action rifles is the DP27. So, how do I put this? Well, it's garbage. It is. It's just trash. It's a trash weapon. You shouldn't use it. It sucks. And there's multiple reasons for this. The fire rate is awful. It's quite similar to that of the grease gun. You don't have a belt-fed system, so you have these pan-shaped magazines that you need to swap out after like 50 shots. So you don't really have the ability to keep firing for too long before having to reload. The reload itself is not super fast, and the sights are pretty bad. So yeah, overall, maybe this should even rank lower than the bolt action rifles, because at least those are fun to use. The DP is just absolute garbage. Don't use it, it sucks. Alright, moving on to tier B, starting off with the grease gun. The grease gun it's basically the worst SMG in the game, though it is quite the trollish weapon, because the amount of headshots that I get with the grease gun is, I think it's an unexplained mystery, to be honest. I think I'm honestly starting to suspect that there's like a homing bullet every like 6 shots or something, because yeah, it is a really troll weapon. You get a lot more headshots, and it's more accurate than, you know, the animations would let you to believe. So it's effective, but it's just nowhere near as good as the other SMGs like the MP40 or the Thompson. So grease gun, not as good. You know, still usable if you're running the assault class and you want to use a satchel, it's okay. You can kind of defend yourself with a grease gun. It's going to be all right, but it's not going to be the weapon that you want to use, you know, most of the time compared to other options that you might have. For example, if you're running assault, you might want to use the Thompson or the bar before you use the grease gun. If you're playing engineer, the other option you have is going to be the carbine, and that's also a tier B weapon. And the carbine is actually quite unique because unlike every single other semi-auto like the Gevera 43 or the SVT or the M1 Garand, those will one-shot you up to 200 meters, while the carbine is a one-shot up to 50 meters, and after that it's a two-shot. And as far as I can tell, it's always a two-shot after those 50 meters. And the reason why the carbine is here and not further up on the list is because, honestly, I don't think it's better than something like the BAR or the MP40 or the Thompson in basically any way. It is, you know, it does have that one shot up to 50 meters, which would make it cool for close range encounters, but I would much rather have something like the MP40 or the Thompson, because the fire rate on those weapons basically makes the fact that they are a two-shot irrelevant, really. And you know, you get more suppression. The carbine does have a decent mag, but it feels like a very middle of the road weapon, which isn't really good at any one thing. You know, if you're going to be fighting at range, I would much rather have the M1 Garand or the Gewehr or any other semi-auto in the game. And if I'm going to be fighting close range, then I would much rather have an SMG. And lastly, topping off tier B, we have the 30 caliber Browning and the MG34. I'd say these two perform very similar, but the reality is that both of these get overshadowed by the MG42. So they are alright in their role. They are competent weapons, unlike the Russian DP, so you can use them effectively as MGs, but obviously the MG42 is just better in every single way. So yeah, that's why they are tier B. I also take into account, you know, versatility or ease of use in these lists. So obviously being a weapon that you need to mount in order to be able to use it, that's gonna knock it down a few pegs, and it's not gonna be in the same range as something like the BAR or the MP40, which are in tier A. So let's talk about tier A right now. Starting off, let's talk about the MP40 and the Thompson. Both weapons are quite similar. The Thompson has the advantage in terms of fire rate, so that's going to help it in close range encounters over the MP40. The MP40 is a bit more controllable. I personally prefer it over the Thompson. So at range, the MP40 I think performs better than the Thompson, though the suppression that you get in the Thompson is better than what you get in the MP40. So overall, very similar weapons with slightly different choice in terms of balance, in terms of what you prefer. If you prefer fire rate, you're going to like the Thompson better than the MP40. If you prefer more controllability, you know, better ease of use or shots, then you're going to prefer the MP40. The third SMG that is also on tier A is the PPSH. And the PPSH, this, I think, is going to be a very controversial take, but I don't think the PPSH is as good as the Thompson or the MP40. And the reason for that is because once you start firing the PPSH, it gets really hard to see what you're shooting. If you have to engage multiple enemies that might be at different locations, then it gets really hard to relocate, to re-aim, while with the MP40 and the Thompson, you can do that really, really easily. Now, the PPSH is basically a pocket MG42, so it does have that insane advantage in close range quarters of basically mowing down everything. You just like hold the button, spray and pray, and you're gonna destroy everything. So that's really good. At range, you have to basically type it to be able to, you know, kill infantry at range. Otherwise, it gets really uncontrollable and it climbs up so fast that at range you basically have to aim at the ground below the enemy to be able to shoot them once the gun climbs up. So I don't know, it's just a harder weapon to use. It struggles, I think, at mid-range compared to the MP40 and the Thompson. And a lot of people are going to say like, but the PPSH, the suppression on it is insane, so it's better than the MP40 and the Thompson. I don't think so. Honestly, I don't think so. Most of the time that I'm being shot by the PPSH, it takes me quite a while to die. Like, I get suppressed for a couple of seconds and then I die, which is not the case with the MP40 or the Thompson. I get shot and I die immediately because the accuracy on those guns, the ease of use, everything is just really good. PPSH, it's harder to use at mid-range, and given that a lot of the encounters in this game happen, you know, at a distance of like 50 meters or 100 meters, I think the PPSH is just not as good. So in my opinion, it would be like an A- compared to the MP40 and the Thompson being an A. And up next in Tier A, we have the BAR, which is just not as good as its German counterpart, the STG-44. It has a 20-shot magazine with a relatively slow fire rate, so up close, you know, it kind of gets outclassed by the MP40 and the Thompson, though it is a one-shot up to 100 meters, so that does give it some advantage in close range, and you can use it to single-tap enemies quite effectively, which is why a lot of people enjoy using it. However, it does have some drawbacks. The magazine is one of them. The other is the sights. Once you start firing, the amount of smoke and the recoil and everything, it makes it hard to see where you are actually shooting at. So it does have some different strengths compared to the MP40 and the Thompson or the PPSH, but it does also have those drawbacks. So overall, Tier A, I don't think it's as solid as the STG, which is just a godly weapon. And I don't think it's as bad as something like the carbine or the grease gun. I think overall, if I would have to choose between the carbine or the BAR, I would go for the BAR 100%. So yeah, Tier A, BAR. Lastly, we have the M1 Garand in Tier A. And the reason why the Garand is on Tier A is basically because it's not as good as the G43 or the SVT. And the reason for this is because of two things. One is the lower round capacity at only 8 rounds compared to 10, and also I believe 10 for the SVT. The recoil on the Garand is also quite diagonal compared to a more vertical recoil on the G43 and the SVT. So overall, also the sights on the Garand are not as good as the perfect sights on the G43 or the SVT, which I think has worse sights than the G43, but overall better than the Garand. So the Garand is good. It's not as good as the G43 or the SVT. So now lastly, moving on to Tier S, we have the Gewehr 43 and the SVT, as well as 2 other weapons, but let's talk about those first. Both the Gewehr and the SVT are fantastic weapons. I've always said the semi-auto weapons, semi-auto rifles are the best in the game just because of their nature and the nature of the game itself and the encounters that you have in the game. So these weapons are absolutely great at any range. At close range, you can outperform an SMG because you can one-shot people. So if you're good with your aim, you can basically one-tap a group of people very fast and take them down faster than you could with something like the MP40. And at medium or long range, they are basically the best weapons in the game, period, because they will one-shot you up to 200 meters, just like the bolt-action rifles, but you have, you know, that semi-auto action that's going to allow you to fire several shots if you happen to miss. So you can't really go wrong with these weapons. In any environment, they are going to be useful. They are going to be really good. So yeah, you can use them to clear a building, and you can also use them to get a headshot from 200 meters away at a guy using an MG. They are really versatile weapons that do everything really well. The other incredible weapon topping off here at Tier S is the STG-44. The STG-44 is an absolute beast. It basically combines everything that's good about the SMGs and cranks it up a notch with a larger magazine and a one shot to kill up to 100 meters. So, you know, it does have more stopping power than both the MP40 and the Thompson, which are always at least a 2-shot. So you can absolutely demolish groups of infantry with the STG-44. It is an extremely fun weapon to use. You can struggle with it at range because the bullet drop, there's basically no bullet drop up to 100 meters, and after that it drops dramatically. So it takes some getting used to, and you're gonna have to aim higher than you think compared to the standard bullet drop that you get in the first few meters. So yeah, it does take some getting used to, but once you master it, it is just an absolute beast. It combines the best of both worlds. It's basically the middle ground between the something like the MP40 and the G43. while also having a really large magazine that allows you to have a ton of suppression, and it allows you to outgun and overpower enemies in any situation. So STG-44, top of the list, really extremely good weapon. And lastly, we have the MG42. The MG42, I don't think it needs any introduction. I think you guys know why it's here. It is the best MG in the game for sure. There is absolutely nothing that compares to that insane fire rate. You can melt an entire team in seconds with the MG42. So as an MG, when used correctly, it is devastating. Nothing really comes close. And yes, while the fact that it is an MG and you do need to mount it to be able to use it does subtract some points from it, it is by far the best MG in the game. And, you know, in that intended role, it absolutely dominates. Alright guys, and that's gonna be it. That's the list. Let me know what you think down in the comments. If you agree, if you disagree, please try and keep it civil. And yeah, hopefully you enjoyed it. And if you did, then think about subscribing if you haven't already. And as always, thank you for watching, and I hope I will catch you in the next one.